Hi, my name is Brian Kirsch, and today I want to talk to you about storage, and specifically, I want to talk to you about RAID technology. So we're going to go through a couple major RAID versions and explain to you some of the benefits, positives and negatives with it. So let's get started. Okay, so we've got our data, not a big deal. We store it on the hard drive. Again, not a big deal. We lose the hard drive, well, we lose our data. We're kind of hosed. Because of that, we have the ability to implement RAID. So what RAID is, taking that data and not writing it on one disk, but two. But there's a caveat here. There's a couple things. So the obvious thing is, we're taking the same data and we're putting it on the different drives. So each drive is a mirror of each other. So if we lose a drive, we still have all our data. There's a couple things here. There's two things. There's storage efficiency, and then there's, and that's what that is, are you getting your money's worth, to put it bluntly. And there's also performance. So a couple things here. And let's just say all the drives are 1 terabyte just for grins and easy math. If I'm buying two 1 terabyte drives, and I've got the same data on each, I'm getting 50% of the capacity I bought. Because I'm not combining the drives to get 2 terabytes, I'm writing the same data to both drives. So I'm only getting, half my value and what I paid for it. A little bit of an issue, but I get protection, which is a big deal. Now, there's also performance. Writing to both drives does not cause me a delay. I'm writing the same data to both drives, not a big deal. But when I read the data off, I can actually read data from different drives. And it combines it inside the drive controller. So I get a performance increase on reading the data, but not writing it. Kind of a cool thing. Let's talk about the next version of RAID, our next RAID idea here. RAID 0. I take my data, I split it, and I write it, half to one drive, half to the other. Now, if all drives are the same and it's all 1 terabyte, I'm getting 2 terabytes of use, which is great. So I'm getting, the money I spent, I'm able to utilize it all for the capacity. There's a downside. I lose one drive, I lose half my data, you lose half your file, well, you're done. You lost all your data at the end of the day. So there's no protection here. What's the value? Performance. I can read and write data, separate data, to both drives. This would be great for scrap data, like processing stuff and that I don't care if I lose. RAID 1 gives me the protection, but I lose half the capacity. RAID 0 gives me much better performance, but I have no protection. Definitely an issue. There's one that combines them both, though, and that's kind of the key here, and I want to talk about that. That is RAID 5. Now, you need 3 disks minimum. Typically, you use 4 or more. But what you do is you split the data, and then the last piece is parity. Think of it this way, and this is just an easy way. If you look at the 3 hunks of the file on the screen, if hunk number 1 had a value of 1, the middle piece of data had a value of 2, third piece of data had a value of 3. You add those all up, the parity number, the calculation would be 6. So 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6. You do that, so in the event you lose one of the drives, whether it be the parity drive or data drive, you can basically utilize math, the formula, and reconstruct that data. This is a little bit complex, and you might have to watch this once or twice to make sure this all clicks in. But basically, it's about separating out the data and using a mathematical formula to be able to reconstruct the data. And the key is this parity data moves around. So for every file, the parity data is on a different drive. So it's always spread out. Now, there's a thing here. You can lose one disk. If you lose 2 disks, well, you can't reconstruct the data because you're missing too much data then. If again, all these drives are 1 terabyte, I bought 4 terabytes total, but because of the parity, I end up with 75% usage, meaning 1/4 of it, 25%, is reserved for parity. Now, if I did this in a group of 10 drives, one of the drives would still have to be parity. That means 10%. It really depends on your math and how big the RAID group you use is. The key is if you have a big RAID group of 100 disks and you lose 2, you lost it all. So most people go about 4 or 5 disks in a group to prevent a double disk fault. But the reason that this is so popular, the more spindles you have, the more performance you have. Each disk has about 100 IOPS, input outputs per second, meaning 4 disks, 400 IOPS. That gives you great performance, both reads and writes. There's a little bit of a write penalty to deal with the parity calculation, but it's not big. The reason you don't see this in your home machine, it's too big. You're requiring 4 disks. That's a lot. But you definitely see this in the server world. It is absolutely ideal, and it gives you incredible performance. And that's a big deal. I mean, it gives you both protection and performance, so it's a great middle ground between RAID 0, RAID 1, and what is RAID 5. And that is RAID in a nutshell. So again, thank you for watching, and have a good day.